just before going to generation, I wanted to speak about properties of angle modulated signal. So what are those important properties of the angle modulated signal? See here, the waveform we had already drawn the other day. Just to show you again, if your message is a sine, you can see B represents the message, A represents the carrier, okay? And C here represents what? What does C represent? If sine message and a sinusoid carrier like this, looking at C, can't you tell what does it mean? Yes? Somebody please answer. Yes, it is amplitude modulated signal. You see the amplitude of this carrier is changing in accordance with the message. So this is amplitude modulated signal. Now coming to D. Can you tell me what would D be? Anybody? You see D in comparison with the message. See, your message is a sinusoid, and looking at D, can you tell me whether it will be phase modulated or frequency modulated? Yes?
Frequency modulated.
No, it's not frequency modulated.
It's phase modulated.
Can you tell me why it is phase modulated? See, when you compare this sinusoidal message and this modulated signal, what do you see? You see that the high frequency components, the waveform is closely spaced at the beginning. So here the message is 0, but I'm getting high frequency near 0 message. Please mute yourself. This means that I have differentiated this message. Hope you remember. We differentiate the message, conversion from frequency modulation to phase or phase modulation to frequency modulation. So you have a frequency modulator available. You should get the phase modulated signal as output, means you should feed in the differential of this message. What is differential of sine? It is cos. So differential of sine is cos. So I'm going to get the signal something like this. Sorry, I don't have the pen today, so I'm not able to draw. Anyway, so a cosine signal like this. Okay, this cosine signal has peak when the sine is at 0 and vice versa. Okay, so you see I am getting high frequency components near 0, means this is in response to a cosine signal, which would be differential of the message. Okay, so you should try to analyze like this. That's why this is the phase modulated signal, whereas this one which I am showing here is the frequency modulated signal, because this responds directly to what? Amplitude of your input sine wave. So it responds directly to amplitude of your input sine wave, which looks something like this. Okay, so I can't draw neatly here without this. Anyway, so if you can see it here, your message is a sine, and the last component you observe, whenever amplitude of this message is high, you get the highest frequency. Whenever it is low, you're getting the lowest frequency. So at this point, when message amplitude is minimum, you have the waveforms very far spaced. When the message amplitude is maximum, you have the waveform closely spaced. That means high frequency at high message amplitude, low frequency at low message amplitude. Okay, so I had told you about this technique. Anyway, now some important properties of angle modulated signal we'll just run through fast. First property is the constant transmitted power. So please remember, whenever we have an angle modulated signal, whether it is phase modulation or frequency modulation, the transmitted power remains constant. So the average transmitted power, you remember both the waveforms, AC cos 2 pi fct plus kp m of t, that is phase modulation. AC cos 2 pi fct plus 2 pi kf integral m of t dt, that is frequency modulation. So in both the cases, if I observe, the amplitude is just AC, right? So what would be the RMS voltage? If AC represents the peak voltage, the RMS voltage would be AC by root 2. And the power would be AC by root 2 whole square divided by R. So it would be AC square by 2R. In this case, if I considered R as 1 ohm, it will just be AC square by 2. So please remember, in an angle modulated signal, be it phase or frequency modulation, the transmitted power remains constant, almost constant. Let me say that. Any doubts there? Okay. Actually, okay, there can be a valid doubt. Anyway, you think of, let me not tell you. So non-linearity of the modulation process. This is another very important factor in angle modulation. So what do you mean by linearity? When I say there is linearity, that means if I consider the message is made up of two messages, say m of t is m1 of t plus m2 of t, then say for example, I find the phase modulated signal for this message. S of t here, you see, represents the phase modulated signal. Are you able to see the equations? Do you want me to expand it a little more? Okay. So can you see it? This S of t represents the phase modulated signal by substituting this m of t, which is m1 plus m2 as the message. So I'm going to get AC cos 2 pi fct plus kp m1 of t plus m2 of t. Now, if I have to prove linearity, if I take the individual messages and find the phase modulated signal, let me say when M1 alone was the message, the phase modulated signal would be AC cos 2 pi fct plus kp M1 of t. Similarly, if M2 alone was the message, the phase modulated signal would be AC cos 2 pi fct plus kp M2 of t. Now, linearity means that if I add these two, the expression S1 and S2, if I add, I should get S of t, because as per linearity theorem, if we have two, if I have a message as sum of two messages M1 and MT, so due to those individual messages, whatever phase modulated signal was created, if I take the sum of those two, it should give me the same result which I obtained when I consider the sum of messages directly to obtain the phase modulated signal. But do you think it would be equal? See, you add S1 plus S2. Will it be equal to S of t?
No, ma'am.
Surely not. Why? Because we have this cosine here. This is cos of 2 pi fct plus kp m1 plus AC cos of 2 pi fct plus kp m2. So, because of this non-linearity, sine, cosines and all are non-linear variables or non-linear equations. So, because of this non-linearity, we can't have S1 plus S2 equal to S of t, and this similar result, if I try to do the same thing with respect to FM also, I'll get a same result. That means 2 pi fct plus 2 pi kf integral m1 plus m2 I will get. And if I take individual message components, I'll get 2 pi kf integral m1. And in the second one, 2 pi kf integral m2. Similarly, since they are within this cosine, they will not be equal. So another very important property of angle modulated signals is their non-linearity. But though this non-linearity makes it difficult for us to analyze in terms of noise effects and other things, this non-linearity is very useful property here. Because of this non-linearity only, angle modulation is better than amplitude modulation in terms of performance in noise and other things. So non-linearity is actually very useful here. Okay. So please remember, amplitude modulation is a linear modulation scheme, whereas angle modulation is a non-linear modulation scheme. Okay. Third property, irregularity in the zero crossings. I think this you can easily understand and visualize. We saw the waveform just now. Do I have all zero crossings at same intervals? Surely not. The property of PM and FM is to have closely spaced signals at high amplitude, to have far spaced signals. So zero crossings are those points when the sinusoidal carrier crosses zero, either from positive to negative or from negative to positive. And as we saw in the waveform, as you observed in the waveform here, see, the distance between this and this zero crossing is different, whereas the distance between this zero crossing and this zero crossing is different. So surely in phase and frequency modulation, we see irregularity in the zero crossings. Okay. And this effect also is due to the non-linearity of the angle modulation scheme. Okay. So the non-linearity only causes this, and this is the main useful property for us. The other property is visualization difficulty of the message waveform. So naturally we can see it is not as easy as amplitude modulation. It is quite difficult to visualize the message waveform, especially when we consider phase modulation. At least in frequency modulation, I'll directly write the frequency in proportion to the message amplitude. But for phase modulation, you should differentiate the message and then draw frequency modulated signal of that differentiated message. That would give you phase modulation. So it's not very difficult. It's not very easy for us to visualize the message waveform in angle modulated signals. And another very important property is trade-off of increased transmission bandwidth for improved noise performance. In the sense, if I want better performance in the presence of noise, then I should send the signal using higher bandwidth. So if I'm going to give better bandwidth or higher bandwidth, then the performance of the signal would be good in spite of noise being there. But if I give low bandwidth, the performance of the signal will be bad. So there is always a trade-off. So whenever I increase the bandwidth, I'm going to get a better performance. Naturally, increasing bandwidth is difficult. We all have limited bandwidth and we try to use that. So increasing bandwidth will give you better performance in the presence of noise. So this is called trade-off. Okay, these are the 5 main properties of angle modulated signal which you have to remember. And I think we already spoke about frequency modulation equation and narrow band frequency modulation, the phasor diagram, and also the wideband frequency modulation we derived in the last class. We used Bessel function because it would reduce to the form. When we used complex exponential Fourier series, the integral would come to this form, as you can see. While finding the coefficient Cn, the integral would come to this form, and that form could not be evaluated using normal integral in the closed form. Hence, we use the Bessel function of the first kind. And we wrote properties of Bessel function, all this, and the Bessel function waveform. Here you can see it more neatly. How J naught of beta is a cosine, J1 of beta and all are sines, but all are at certain delays. Okay, so this is the plot of Bessel functions. And the final equation we saw, the spectrum of angle modulated signal. Then we spoke about transmission bandwidth BT. This transmission bandwidth is 2 delta F plus 2 FM. This is alternate way of writing 2 into 1 plus beta into FM using Carson's rule. So we could write it in different ways. And we said by Carson's rule, we are going to underestimate the bandwidth. So they came up with another method using universal curve. In universal curve, they would plot beta versus this BT by delta F transmission bandwidth. This is the universal curve you can see here. So in this universal curve, you can see plot of BT by delta F versus beta. And using this universal curve, we could determine the expression, or not exactly expression, that ratio you could find. Okay. So I think we solved some problems also. Next, let's move on to generation of FM signals. So actually there are two methods for generation of FM signals, and they are, excuse me, okay. One is the direct method and the second one is known as indirect method. So as you can see here, the direct method uses a simple oscillator which we are all very familiar, known as Hartley oscillator. So what is this Hartley oscillator principle? It has two inductors across which one capacitor is connected. So in your textbook, he has given it in very simple. This transistor alone is shown instead of the complete oscillator, but I think we can analyze using the complete oscillator diagram. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the diagram of Hartley oscillator. Okay, so the complete amplifier circuit is here. The feedback network has two inductors L1, L2 in parallel with a fixed capacitance C0 in parallel with a variable capacitance CV. So this is the actual circuit which we are going to consider for Hartley oscillator, which is used as a direct generation technique for frequency modulated signal. Okay, I hope all of you remember this. You have worked it in the lab also, the Hartley oscillator, right? Now, coming to this amplifier part, we are leaving. It's a transistor based amplifier. So in your textbook, he just showed the transistor. Okay, you can even write like that. It's okay. Now coming to the inductors are fixed. L1 and L2 are fixed. This capacitance C0 is also fixed. Okay. So if I use only these three values, I'm going to get a fixed frequency of oscillation generated. And that frequency is your carrier frequency FC. Okay. You can call it F0 or FC. The fixed frequency due to just these three components, L1, L2 and C0. Now, in parallel with C0, I'm going to introduce another capacitor that is variable. We call it as a varactor. Hope all of you have heard of varactor diode. A varactor diode is generally written like this. It's not getting enabled. Okay. So it is a diode and a capacitor together. Usually we represent a varactor diode as diode with capacitor, and here it acts like a variable capacitor. Okay, a varactor is nothing but a variable capacitor. So this varactor diode always works in reverse bias. The main property of varactor diode is it is going to work under reverse bias condition. So what is that principle? Here, if I apply an input voltage Vi across the varactor in reverse bias, as I am going to increase that reverse bias voltage, what will happen to the depletion width? Remember, it's a diode acting like a capacitor. Okay, you know all diodes will give some capacitance at the depletion layer, right? There are two types of capacitances created in diodes. All of you should remember that. One is the diffusion capacitance, the other is the transition capacitance. Can you tell me which among the two capacitances will be created during reverse bias? In a diode, you have the diffusion and transition capacitances present. Which capacitance is going to be present during reverse bias? Have you forgotten all your electronic devices? Huh? You have studied this, right? Even in your basic electronics, you would have dealt a little. No answer. Okay. So whether you have studied it or not, anyhow, I am telling you, in a diode, there will always be two capacitances created. When the diode is forward biased, the depletion junction becomes smaller, but still we have accumulation of what? Immobile ions near in the depletion layer. One side positive, one side negative. So that acts like a parallel plate capacitor, creating the diffusion capacitance. Okay. So whenever diode is forward biased, there is the diffusion capacitance in a diode near the depletion region. And whenever a diode is reverse biased, the capacitance which comes into picture is called transition capacitance. So here, this varactor diode is suitable for use in reverse bias only. So we are going to apply a reverse bias voltage. As the reverse bias voltage increases, you see what is written in red here. As the reverse bias voltage increases, okay, here, what happens? The width of the depletion region will become larger. The depletion width will widen. Yes or no? Higher the reverse bias, depletion layer increases width. So what happens to the capacitance? Capacitance is calculated as epsilon A by width. That width is written as W or D, whatever. So whenever I'm applying more reverse bias, the width of the depletion layer is increasing. So naturally the capacitance decreases. Okay. Similarly, vice versa. If I'm going to reduce the reverse bias voltage across the diode, then the depletion width will reduce. W reduces. And what happens to the capacitance? Epsilon A by W. W reduces means C should increase. The transition capacitance increases. So we are using a transition capacitance of the varactor in consideration here. And the voltage which we are going to apply across this varactor is your message. So to generate an FM signal, we are using the Hartley oscillator setup, and to generate that variable frequency at the output, I'm going to apply the message voltage across a variable capacitor or varactor diode. Is this concept clear? Now, coming to the derivation. I think if possible, you note down. If not, I'll share this PDF. Okay. So listen carefully here. The instantaneous frequency of the oscillator is what? Hartley oscillator, all of us know the equation. 1 by 2 pi root LC, right? And in that root LC, I should take L1 plus L2 because it has two inductors. The Hartley oscillator has two inductors. So 1 by 2 pi root of L1 plus L2 into capacitance. I am going to consider that capacitance as a function of time because I have a fixed and variable capacitance, right? So what will we do next? We'll write C of t as C naught plus CV. Can I write it like that? Here the capacitors are in parallel. What happens when capacitors are in parallel? The capacitance, effective capacitance is sum of the two capacitors. Yes or no? Right? See, whenever resistors are in series, the effective resistance will be sum of the resistors. Whereas whenever the capacitors are in parallel, the effective capacitance C of t is sum of the two capacitors. So C of t is equal to C naught plus CV. Okay. Now let's try to simplify this. This variable capacitance we know in a varactor is proportional to the reverse biased message voltage. So I'll take negative of the message. The capacitance will decrease when the message increases. The capacitance will increase when the message decreases. So it is like proportional to negative of the message, or if I remove the proportionality symbol and put equal to, I have to introduce a constant of proportionality Kc. So Cv is equal to minus Kc m of t. Can you tell me what would be the unit for Kc? If you isolate Kc here, it would be capacitance by the message voltage. So farads per volt. Okay. Kc represents the what? Sensitivity of the variable capacitor to the variation in message voltage. As I change the message voltage, by how much the capacitor value will change. So it is expressed in farads per volt. Now what we are going to do? We'll take this CV and we'll substitute in the equation for instantaneous frequency Fi. So I'm going to substitute 1 by 2 pi root L1 plus L2 into what did I have? I had C naught plus CV. So for CV, I'm going to put minus Kc into m of t. Okay. So C naught minus Kc into m of t we have now. Is this clear till here? Any doubts? If you don't answer anything, I just have to proceed. Okay. So I assume you won't have any doubts. We'll simplify this now to get the standard FM expression. I want to prove that the output of this Hartley oscillator would be an FM wave, which means from this equation, I should get the form of standard FM. So from now onwards, it's only mathematical manipulations. So what do I do in the next step? I'll take this capacitance, fixed capacitance C naught outside the bracket. So inside I'm going to have 1 minus Kc by C naught m of t. Because I don't have the C naught term here, I should divide, right? And we know L1 plus L2 is equal to L, the total inductance. So I can write this term outside the bracket as 1 by 2 pi root L into C naught, okay? Into the term inside 1 minus Kc m of t by C naught. Now, this factor which is outside the square root 1 by 2 pi root L C naught, I'm going to call it as F naught. You can call it as FC or F naught, okay? The fixed frequency component. So either FC or F naught you call it. This component is fixed. It doesn't change with change in message, right? So since it remains fixed, this is the fixed frequency component. Now, if I substitute f naught in place of this value, the instantaneous frequency fi becomes f naught divided by root of 1 minus kc m of t by c naught. And we know where f naught is 1 by 2 pi root L into c naught. Now, something which is under square root, I can write it as 1 minus kc m of t by c naught to the power of half. Yes or no? Square root means that whole thing to the power of half is square root. So what am I doing here? I'm writing it as to the power of half. Then I can shift it to the numerator. This component, the square root component, was in the denominator. Now, after writing it as power of half, if I shift it to numerator, it becomes to the power of minus half. Okay. So I told you it's all mathematics now, only manipulations to get the final FM equation. So what we did, we wrote this as power of half, then we shifted it to the numerator. I got power of minus half. Now I can use the expansion series in the for equations in the form 1 minus x to the power of minus half. You have your Taylor's, Maclaurin series, anything. So whichever series satisfies this 1 minus x to the power of minus half, it could be written as 1 plus x by 2 factorial minus x square by 3 factorial, so on. So this is a standard expansion series. Here, what is the value of x in this equation? Kc m of t by c naught. So the value of x is Kc m of t by c naught. So what should you do? Here, this Kc m of t by c naught is quite small. Okay. So if x value is small, I'll consider only first two terms in the equation because the third term will become square of x. If I have x as 0.1, x square will be 0.01. If you have x as 0.01, x square will be 0.0001 or 10 to the power of minus 4. So whenever x is small, we usually consider only first two terms in this equation, which involves x directly. I don't want x square and x cubed components. Okay. So what should we do? Substitute in this equation, where in this equation 1 minus kc m of t by c naught to the power of half, I am going to use the expansion for this series, but only first two terms. So accordingly, I'm going to get 1 plus kc m of t by c naught into 2 factorial, which is 2. So I'm going to get 1 plus, as you can see, kc m of t by c naught into 2. Okay, after neglecting higher order terms. Now, this f naught which we had outside, what's the value of this f naught? 1 by 2 pi root LC. This f naught into 1 plus kc m of t by 2 c naught we are going to get. Now, what should I do? How will I, before finding theta I have fi, I should find theta I. Rather than writing this complete equation, I'll consider group of all the constant terms. I have multiplied this f naught inside this equation. So I'm going to get f naught plus kc f naught by 2 c naught into m of t. Kc is in farad per volt. Frequency here is in hertz. Here capacitor is in farad. So if you combine all this, we'll get the unit of hertz per volt, because farad cancels, you have hertz per volt, which is nothing but I can call it as the frequency sensitivity of the modulator KF. So what is KF? KF is Kc into f naught by 2 c naught. So I'm just substituting all the units. Kc is farad per volt. F naught is in hertz, C naught is in farad. So farad cancels and what will be left out is in hertz per volt, which represents the unit for frequency sensitivity of the modulator. Okay, so please log in back once this goes out. Now I have represented the instantaneous equation for frequency as f naught plus kf m of t. So can someone tell me how do I get theta I from this? So now we'll go to the next step to find the angle theta I from the instantaneous frequency fi. So integral 0 to t fi will give you theta I only when I multiply it with 2 pi. Remember, theta is integral of omega I dt. Omega is the angular frequency. Only when you integrate the angular frequency, you will get the angle of the signal. Please remember. So, Fi is the natural frequency. If I multiply that Fi with 2 pi, I'm going to get the angular frequency. That angular frequency I'm going to integrate from 0 to t. Okay. So I have substituted in that equation theta I is 2 pi. We had the first term as you see here. What fi I had it as f naught plus kf m of t. Okay. So when I integrate, I'm going to get 2 pi integral f naught dt plus 2 pi integral kf m of t dt. So the overall evaluation of this expression, integral f naught dt means it becomes f naught is a constant frequency. So integral 1 dt is t, right? So the first term becomes 2 pi f naught into t because f naught is a constant. And the second term becomes 2 pi kf integral 0 to t m of t dt. Does this look familiar? The format of this expression. So when we get the angle of this signal as 2 pi f naught t plus 2 pi kf integral m of t, I can simply substitute the angle in the expression for fm. Therefore, the fm waveform which is generated by the Hartley oscillator as fm of t is equal to AC cos theta I of t. Okay. AC cos the angle. AC represents the magnitude of the carrier. The carrier is a cosine wave and theta I represents angle of the carrier, which is defined by the above equation. Okay. So SFM of t here is AC cos 2 pi f naught t plus 2 pi kf integral 0 to t m of t dt. Okay. Okay. So this shows that the Hartley oscillator generates an FM wave given a varactor is connected in parallel with the fixed capacitor C0. This varactor has the property that as the reverse bias voltage applied across the varactor increases, its capacitance decreases. So using this, we will define the instantaneous frequency of the oscillator and finally the instantaneous angle theta I, and finally the output of the oscillator would be a cosine signal with this instantaneous angle. Okay, so we proved that this Hartley oscillator which we have considered here, okay, has been able to generate an FM wave. The FM wave we proved by showing that the output of that oscillator is equal to the standard equation of FM. Is this clear? This is the direct method of FM generation. So direct method of FM generation involves a Hartley oscillator using a varactor in parallel with fixed capacitance C0. Now, coming to the advantages of this method, one main advantage is it gives a large frequency deviation as compared to indirect method. You haven't yet seen the indirect method. I'll show you next. Okay. So it gives you a good or large frequency deviation directly. But the disadvantage is the FM signal which is generated will be narrow band FM. It's not a wide band FM. But I told you in practice, all the FM signals which we use for any transmission would usually be a wide band FM signal. Narrow band FM is not useful to us. That is only for study purpose to understand what it is. But normally we try to use wide band FM in all our analysis and transmissions, FM transmissions. We always use wide band FM. Okay. So in order to generate wide band FM from the narrow band FM, which is generated in this Hartley oscillator, we are going to use the indirect method of FM generation, which is also called as Armstrong's method. Okay. See, in indirect method of FM generation, also known as Armstrong's method, we can overcome the disadvantage of generating a narrow band FM. Hartley oscillator usually generates narrow band. In order to generate wide band, we should multiply the frequency generated with some constant value using frequency multipliers. So what we do here, we are going to use frequency multiplier circuits, which will multiply the signal generated with some constant frequency. So you look at this block diagram, we have a voltage controlled oscillator. VCO is short form for voltage controlled oscillator, to which we are going to connect the message signal. Okay. And the output which is generated. This voltage controlled oscillator is nothing but the Hartley oscillator which we studied just now. Can I call it as voltage controlled oscillator? Which voltage is the controlling voltage in the Hartley oscillator which we saw? Which voltage controls the output frequency? Please speak up. Yeah. Which voltage controls the output frequency in the method which we discussed just now? Only one voltage was given in that circuit. In oscillator, other than DC biasing voltage, we normally don't give input voltages. But in the previous circuit, we applied one voltage. What was that voltage? Yes? What are you people doing? It's the message voltage. The message voltage has been applied across the varactor. So the output depends on this message voltage, right? Now, if I use this Hartley oscillator, it's a voltage controlled oscillator because the input message voltage will be able to control the output frequency. Okay. The output frequency could be controlled by the input message signal. You give the message, you get the narrow band FM signal. That was the main disadvantage of Hartley oscillator. We would get a narrow band FM. So what will I do? I will use a component called as frequency multiplier, and I'm going to multiply the frequency of the signal which is generated using this first stage Hartley oscillator. Say I'm going to get a carrier frequency of 10 kilohertz. I can design a multiplication factor of 10 to the power of 5 or 10,000 or whatever, 1 lakh, and you'll get the output frequency as 10 power 5 into 10k, something like that, which is a large value. It will be in what? Gigahertz. Huh? Yeah, more than mega. It will be approximately in gigahertz. So if you want to get wideband FM, you have to multiply this frequency using frequency multiplier. Another important thing which happens when I multiply is not just the carrier frequency gets multiplied. So if I have carrier frequency F0 here, I can multiply it with 50, I'll get 50 F0. Along with carrier frequency, what other thing gets multiplied? We have the frequency deviation getting multiplied. So along with the carrier frequency, the frequency deviation will also get multiplied using this multiplier. There are three things which will actually be multiplied. One is the carrier frequency. The second is frequency deviation delta F. And the third one is the modulation index beta. So three different factors get multiplied with the multiplier integer here. And usually when we have large multiplication values to implement, we can't do it with a single stage multiplier. We'll use a two-stage multiplier. The simple reason is that when I use a single stage multiplier, do you know what is the standard range for FM radio transmission? Can somebody tell me? Your normal FM radio which you listen always on your mobiles. Do you know the range of frequencies? Yes or no? Please answer something, at least tell no. If you're silent like this, I would never know whether participants are there or not. All of you have switched on your mobiles or laptops and moving around. Anyway, if the FM range which you use in your commercial broadcast is, yes, you're right, Bhanu Prasad, 88 megahertz to 108 megahertz. The standard FM frequency band is 88 to 108 megahertz. And if, say for example, I have this first stage oscillator generating a frequency of 100 kilohertz. Let this Hartley oscillator in the first stage, which is also called voltage controlled oscillator, generate 100 kilohertz output. In order to get the carrier in the range 88 to 108, let me say I want 100 megahertz output. What will be the multiplier factor here? From 100k to 100 mega, if I want to multiply, the multiplication factor would be 1000. Yes or no? I had 100k output. I need 100 meg output. I'm going to send a signal at carrier of 100 meg. So then the multiplication factor would be 100 mega divided by 100k, which would give me 1000. If you have such large multipliers, it can't be implemented with one block. We have to use two separate blocks. And I can't keep the two separate blocks next to each other because the other factor which we need here is the frequency deviation. So the frequency deviation for commercial FM transmission will be around 75 kilohertz. Okay. Anyway, unfortunately, I don't have the pen today. It would be easy if I could write. So 75 kilohertz is the final frequency deviation which I need in commercial transmission. Whereas with the Hartley oscillator, you will get a frequency deviation as small as 20 hertz. So according to that, if you decide the multiplication factor, You have to divide 75K with 20. What would you get? 75 divided by 2 is how much? 37.5, right? 75 by 2 is 37.5. So 75,000 divided by 20 means it will be 7,500 by 2, 3750, right? Am I right? So you should get a multiplication factor of 3750 to get the frequency deviation of 75K. That 3750 will be split into 2 multipliers because it is huge. Now again, if I consider the carrier frequency, the carrier frequency output here is 100 kilohertz. And if I multiply 100K with 3750, what will happen? I'm going to get the final frequency as 3750 kilohertz, or how much mega? 3.7 mega, which will not be in your FM range. Your FM range, frequency range should be 88 to 108, but you're not getting it in that range because you're multiplying it with a multiplier which is different from what is needed. Okay. So it will go out of the range. It will be much higher than the range. I think I'm going to get 37 mega or 370 mega, something like that, out of the range. So what would happen? To bring it within that range of 88 to 108, I use this frequency mixer. Do you all remember what is this frequency mixer? We had spoken about this when we discussed amplitude modulation. We spoke about a circuit called as frequency translation circuit, also known as the frequency mixer. What is the job of this mixer? It will accept a local oscillator signal and an input signal. The output it's going to generate will be the sum of these two frequencies as well as difference. I will have sum and difference components at the output of the mixer, out of which usually we choose the difference frequency, and then the second stage multiplier is implemented. Anyway, all this looks quite a lot for you. All you need to remember here is I have to multiply the output of Hartley oscillator with a frequency multiplier. And since the multiplication value will be large, I have to divide that multiplier into two parts. So two values of multiplication. And in between the two values, I should always use a mixer because I should get the carrier frequency within the FM transmission range. That's all you remember. Why we use this mixer? To get the carrier frequency, the final carrier frequency within the range of FM transmission frequency 88 to 108. I think this implementation is called indirect method or Armstrong's method. And what would be there? Any guesses what would be there in the frequency multiplier? All drop in your USNs. All of you, please drop in your USNs. Any guess what would be inside a frequency multiplier? Inside this frequency multiplier, we would have a non-linear device like a diode or transistor. Okay. So a non-linear device like diode or transistor would be there along with a band pass filter. You can think of the reason why non-linear device is used. We used non-linear devices like diodes when we generated AM. What was the property of the non-linear device? Say for example, square law device was the non-linear device. Output is equal to A1 VI plus A2 VI square. If I have nth order non-linearity, output will be equal to A1 VI plus A2 VI square plus A3 VI cubed, so on, until an vi to the power of n. Nth order nonlinearity is possible in devices like diodes and transistors. Okay, so you generate the nonlinearity, and whichever order nonlinear you want, the third order nonlinearity, you filter out that term. So I'll take the vi cube term outside. I'll get the multiplication factor as 3. If I want multiplication factor as 10, I will take the 10th term filtered out using bandpass filter. So in a nonlinear device, nth order nonlinearity can be generated. Whichever order nonlinearity you want, whatever multiplication factor you want, you will filter out only that nonlinearity in the equation. So 10th order means filter out vi to the power of 10 term. You'll get 10 multiplication factor of 10. Okay. 100th means vi to the power of 100 term. You'll get 100 into v whatever frequency. The multiplication factor would turn out to be 100. So if you want to filter out one nonlinear component, you should use a bandpass filter. Okay, so I think if all of you have entered your USNs, I'll stop with this and continue in the next class with what are the disadvantages of this method and how we can overcome that. Stability is the main problem in this method, and to overcome that, we have to go for some more improvement in this circuit. So this is nonlinear method of AM generation. The first one, Hartley oscillator, is linear method. Rakshita, you have any doubts? Have you all entered your USN? If all have entered USN, I'll stop at this stage. Please go through this. I'll send it on every day's lessons. I'm sending it on Google Classroom. And even whenever I could upload videos, I'll send the link for those videos also on Google Classroom. Please see your Google Classroom feed every day. Okay. Every day there will be something or the other. Okay, then let me end today's meeting. If you don't have anything else, I'll end the meeting. Yeah. Thank you.